United States has taken out the leader of Al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri, in a drone strike in Afghanistan. He was one of the world's most wanted men, a mastermind behind the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Here's the latest from CNN.
Zawahiri led Al-Qaeda for more than a decade. He was wanted on a $25 million reward for his role in the 9/11 attacks, the murder of U.S. nationals outside of the United States, and an attack on a federal facility resulting in death. He took charge of the military group since the killing of Osama bin Laden in 2011.
The United States continues to demonstrate our resolve and our capacity to defend the American people against those who seek to do us harm. No matter how long it takes, no matter where you hide, if you are a threat to our people, the United States will find you and take you out.
Zawahiri's targeted death comes nearly a year after the U.S.'s military withdrawal from Afghanistan and the Taliban's takeover of the country.
Now, joining me to discuss this now is an expert visiting Australia at the moment, Behnam Taleblu, who's a senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Thanks for joining us, Behnam. I wanted to talk to you mainly about Iran, your specialty, but firstly, this taking out of the Al-Qaeda leader in Afghanistan, what does that do to change the dynamics in the region?
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you again, and really important connective tissue here between Iran and Al-Qaeda, despite the sectarian differences of these two. Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, being a Shia nation, and Al-Qaeda being a Sunni terrorist organization, a Sunni terrorist group. Ultimately, the Islamic Republic has provided a lot of laissez-passer material, organizational, and political support to Al-Qaeda, contrary to popular belief. And ultimately, both these two Islamist jihadist actors are looking to target and have targeted the United States in the past. And get this, with the killing of Ayman al-Zawahiri, the next up, the believed number 2 of Al-Qaeda, is assumed to be in Iran, Saif al-Adil. So that may mean that the Iranian government, if that individual is still there, will have to decide what to do, to expel this person or to allegedly promote them, or to, basically facilitate the rise of Al-Qaeda's next leader. So all eyes are on Iran's eastern border.
That is extraordinary when you think about the key divide in the region being between the Sunni and the Shia, and Iran being a Shia nation to harbouring Sunni terrorists, I suppose united by a common enemy. I just want to show you something that the US president said in response to the killing. Let's have a look at this.
The United States continues to demonstrate our resolve and our capacity to defend the American people against those who seek to do us harm. We make it clear again tonight that no matter how long it takes, no matter where you hide, if you are a threat to our people, the United States will find you and take you out.
Okay, he's referencing there that killing and Al-Qaeda and similar terrorist organisations. But if he's going to show that sort of resolve about those who would do harm to America, is it the case that the US president has taken his eye off, and the US establishment has taken their eye off the threat of a nuclear-armed Iran in recent years?
Most unfortunately, I think you're exactly right. Even though the Biden administration has been in power now for almost 2 years, it spent the vast majority of these 2 years trying to work its way back into a fatally flawed nuclear agreement that would, instead of preventing and fully blocking all of Iran's pathways to a nuclear weapon, it would actually pave the way for the Islamic Republic to incrementally expand its nuclear program over time. And the lack of sanctions enforcement, the lack of enforcing the tough penalties that it had inherited from the Trump administration, allowed Iran to significantly maximize the kind of nuclear escalation and the nuclear capabilities that they have on soil in the country today. And just recently, even though the Biden administration is trying to begin to pivot to embrace a little bit of pressure on the oil front and the petrochemical sanctions enforcement front, the Iranians continue to say that they're going to be advancing their program and indeed are deploying more advanced centrifuges, which are the machines that do spin uranium, which ultimately is the fissile material needed for a potential nuclear bomb.
I was reading some of your analysis, and you make a very, very powerful point about what evil leaders say and evil regimes say and how they tend to follow through. You look at what's happened in Ukraine and you say how so many observers heard the threats, from Vladimir Putin and the Russians for so long, but made arguments as to why an invasion wouldn't be sensible, wouldn't be practical, and therefore wouldn't happen. And yet now we're dealing with the horrible consequences of that. And so you say that when we hear China say what it says about Taiwan, we should listen and think that it actually means what it says. And in particular, talking about Iran, when it says it wants to wipe Israel off the map, we shouldn't dismiss it. We should understand that that is actually what they want to do.
Indeed, a lot of these autocratic countries that you mentioned, autocratic regimes, they've put their money where their mouth is on a lot of this rhetoric. It's not just stuff for domestic consumption. It's not just fluff or pandering to one part of their exceptionally narrow political systems. This is their ideology, and their ideology tells them what their interests and values are. And these types of regimes have spent money and time and attention and political capital to work towards those goals. You see it with the Islamic Republic's export of the revolution in the Middle East. You see it with the creation of this proxy and terror militia strategy that has basically turned the region into one gigantic battlefield against Israel, against the West, against America. And so when they say death to America, death to Israel, they actually do mean it. And we're looking at what that looks like in real time in the Middle East, most unfortunately.
And speaking of China, tell us about the nexus between Iran and China, particularly when it comes to defence equipment. The Chinese defence minister was in Iran earlier this year.
Oh, indeed. And there's been tightening military ties between Iran and China and Iran and Russia. And on that front, if one is disposed not to like some of the activities of Iran in the region, in the nuclear domain, on the human rights front, on the cyberspace front, the actor that is underwriting the Islamic Republic's foreign aggression and domestic repression is the People's Republic of China. China remains the largest illicit and previously licit importer of Iranian crude oil and petroleum products. So as that is Iran's most significant export and source of foreign earnings, that is basically the way the Islamic Republic is funding its revolutionary foreign and security policy. So if you got to follow the money, that does mean that there is great connective tissue between Tehran and Beijing.
A great and timely warning, Behnam, at this difficult time, uncertain times, fractious times globally. Don't take our eyes off Iran. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Behnam Ben Taleblu there, who's with the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. Indeed, just a few years ago, a lot of global attention was focused on Iran and preventing it developing those nuclear weapons. The world's taken the pressure off. We can't afford to do that.